Welcome to Planet Oz. I'm Oz. You know, I don't mean to come right out the gate confronting you with something here, but it needs to be said. You are an illegal narcotics manufacturer and smuggler. Maybe user. I know this to be true because I am also. We all are. The drug that I'm talking about is DMT, a very potent, euphoria-inducing psychedelic that is illegal in many places, and yet nonetheless, your brain is producing it right now, and you carry it around inside you everywhere you go. Science and medicine don't necessarily have a crystal clear explanation for why this is the case. So I thought I would consult the planetOZ Public Library to see if there was an esoteric reasoning behind it. I did find one. And if this is true, it says something really amazing and kind of profound about who we are and what we're all doing here. So let's find out if it rings true for you. Okay, so DMT, this potent, euphoria-inducing psychedelic, illegal in a lot of places, yet people find ways to manufacture it, distribute it, consume it. And if somebody is consuming it, it's usually because it's part of a consciousness awakening or spiritual journey, and they'll come back and tell us things like, dude, there were elves. I talked to aliens. I was one with God. And so that fuels further interest, and then there are drug raids, and then the news reports on these raids telling us how dangerous it is. The efficacy of all that is up to you. That's not what this film is about. What this film is discussing is that if the scientific and medical explanations for why we are carrying this same substance and producing it naturally inside our brains, if those explanations seem thin, then maybe this esoteric reason is worth considering. And it goes like this. It starts with a reincarnative model of our cosmic journey. It presumes that our true being is made of light and we incarnate over and over and over again for the purposes of gaining experience and learning. So you've been a plant, you've been a gopher, you've been an ape, and now you're here. If you're looking to take a deep dive into this reincarnative model, it might be worth checking out the works of Dolores Cannon. She was a regressive hypnotherapist, and she was finding that her clients were going beyond their childhoods into past incarnations, and even discussing what happens in between. And after she observed enough commonality in the ways people described how this worked, she put it into books that we can read. So I'm going to make a little analogy here that is going to attempt to capture what is described as happening during these times in between incarnations. And essentially it's as if you were to visit some sort of ethereal travel agency. And you say to the travel agent, you know, every time I incarnate, I get really wrapped up in material things. I think maybe I could benefit from some poverty. And also, I've never really known true love. I'd like to experience that. And also, I never had a pet. That seems like fun. I want to try that too. And the agent says, oh, well, maybe you should try Earth. It has all those things. We'll start you off in poverty and then figure out the rest from there. Boom, sold. Okay, so admittedly it's described with a lot more sophistication than that. But I think the only aspect of it that's really worth geeking out on for the purposes of this conversation would be the aspect of catalyst. And catalyst is kind of like a schedule that you can put in place for your incarnation that is like a series of nudges. So if your incarnation is not having the experiences that you've planned for, or learning the lessons that you want to learn, these nudges will help push in the right direction. And they can get progressively greater and greater in their intensity if you are not getting the message. So some of these things might read as really gnarly experiences, but just keep in mind that if all of this is true, these are things you designed for yourself. There are good reasons to have this catalyst system. For one thing, when you're born into this incarnation, you're behind a veil. You don't remember the travel agency, you don't remember your higher self or the plan. You have no idea what you're doing, how you got here, or why. Plus, you have free will. You can go where you want and do what you want regardless of what the plan is. And not only do you have your own free will, you are operating in a sea of other people's free will. Everyone, everywhere, going every which direction, doing whatever they want. So if you have a hard time getting lost on your own, don't worry. There are plenty of other people to help you. Now, this scenario might present us with some uncomfortable questions. For example, what happens if you fall victim to somebody else's nefarious use of their free will? Like, what if some psychopath snatches you and locks you in an iron cage, and if you don't find the right key before the timer runs out, you're going to be eaten by piranhas? Or what if you fall victim to your own free will? You're angry, you decide to run through the woods throwing caution to the wind, and you end up falling in a pit that used to be somebody's outhouse. You're neck deep and sinking. You're going to suffocate in the worst way imaginable, and all for a lesson you didn't even come here to learn. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if the situation you find yourself in is the result of somebody else's actions or your own. The broad point is, this is not something you planned for when you were at the hyperdimensional travel agency. This isn't experience you wanted to gain or a lesson you wanted to learn. And since you are effectively trapped in the ego body of your incarnation while you're here, the result is essentially torture. And torturing your incarnation was not your intention in coming here. Okay, so according to this esoteric idea, these kinds of situations are exactly the reason your brain produces DMT. If you are going to be faced with trauma that is not productive for your journey, the DMT will kick in, and its incredible euphoric effects will overwhelm the situation. It's almost like a panic button that protects you from the chaos of free will. And it isn't really something that you can necessarily trigger at will. It's more something that your mind, body, and spirit just know. Good analogy might be like adrenaline. When we hear those stories about the kid being trapped under the car and somebody comes along and lifts the car up where normally that would just rip their arms out at the shoulders. There you have it. Everywhere you go, every day, you're a drug mule. But maybe it's for good reason. Because if this whole thing is true, it might suggest something really profound about the way this whole system self-corrects to stay in balance and protect us. So, the DMT is there for you when you need it, or ideally if you need it. So from all of us at planetOZ, to all of you, Godspeed on your journeys, and here's to hoping you never need DMT for these reasons. That story about the outhouse actually happened to my dad's cousin. He didn't die. He was fine. But he was pulling his boat up, and someone had removed their outhouse and not filled in the pit, and he went right in that thing. He really did that.